All right, we're back to the show. It's Gerald coming right back at you here. The sounds and the engine roars are coming back alive again for 2019. It's that time again for auto racing fans all over, but especially NASCAR fans, because this weekend starts, of course, the Great American Race, the Daytona 500 2019 version, and it kicks off the great Monster Cup Energy Racing that everybody knows as NASCAR. So many years dictated by so many great individuals out there. But last year, Joey Logano in the final race, pretty much on some of the final laps, took home the victory and took home the championship in a very hotly contested NASCAR playoff.
It
Actually,
was
NASCAR,
beautiful.
it was beautiful indeed. NASCAR just, it's pretty much one. Actually, I think there was one about 2, 3 years ago that was just a little bit better on the last turn. But outside of that, this was one of the best finishes ever for NASCAR. But hopefully 2019 will be just the same. And here to break down the NASCAR season with me is someone who did a tremendous job last year. He's back once again. It's Marcus de la Garza. Marcus, great to have you back on the show.
Great to be back as always, Gerald. I'm
I'll
loving
tell
it.
you what. Oh, thank you so much. Again, you're taking so much time from for us here. We just truly appreciate it. And it's gonna. I know you're excited already. This is like you said, your time of year. Everything gets started. It gets amped up. You're just so excited to go ahead and see what's going on. First off, there's, as always is every year, there's always a musical chairs when it comes to the driver changes. And there's always this driver goes here, this driver goes there, sponsorship deals, changes as far as expectations are concerned. Obviously, some got changed or moved because of certain finishes. Some got moved up because of their where they finished in the season. Your thoughts on some of the driver changes that took place out there? Like I said, some were out of necessity, and some were just for the sake of change.
Right. We had 7 big driver changes this offseason and 1 crew chief change that is of note. And there's more crew chief changes that happen, but one really big one that stands out. To start with the drivers, though, let's look at Daniel Suarez, former driver of the 19 Toyota Camry for Joe Gibbs Racing. He's moved over to the 41 Ford for Stuart Haas Racing because Kurt Busch, who previously drove that car, moved over to the #1 Chevy for Chip Ganassi Racing. So this is a huge start to the season. That
And
was a
some of
lot.
this is tied into sponsorship, because if a certain driver has a certain sponsor, it's more appealing if they jump to maybe a different type of team or a better team, because they might have that sponsorship tied to that specific driver.
Exactly. So Kurt Busch has Monster as his big sponsor, who is the title sponsor for the series. Daniel Suarez has Eris. They make modems and whatnot. And so it looks like Daniel Suarez is going to be bringing Eris with him, if not this year, next year, to Stuart Haas Racing. And that's a big move right there for both drivers, actually. So
Okay, and there, I know there's a few others, but Daniel Suarez, someone who I believe was the NASCAR Rookie of the Year the first year he came into playing, or he was one of the top rookies. I remember his career has been defined by several promising finishes, but really not gotten into that upper threshold where I think a lot of people had already targeted him to maybe about a year, even 2 years ago.
yeah, and I don't know if that's a fair assumption to put on him, just simply for the fact that the man won a Camping World Truck Series title. He won an Xfinity Series title, and his start has been slow in the Cup Series. However, I would preface that with I don't think he got a fair shake at Joe Gibbs Racing. I'm not
And that's
sure.
and that's easy to, and that's safe to say. I agree with you there, because you see a lot of these champions from different divisions. They come up and they do have a chance to. They do struggle upon their entry, and whether it's because of the team that they're with, because of the car that they're given. Maybe they're not the lead car as far as given the most, as far as the best opportunity to win, or with the right team or whatnot. It's not always the right fit. You're right on that, and that happens with Daniel Suarez, maybe, and also some of the other young drivers that are out there that are looking to burst through, just like Joey Logano did last year.
Yeah, and I will say we had Corey LaJoy on our podcast last year, and driver of the number 32 Ford Go Fast Racing car this year. And Corey LaJoy was a great guy to have on, and asking him some of the questions about, is the jump really that extreme from the Xfinity Series to the Monster Cup Series? The man put it very clearly for us. Said that it's night and day. You're driving an entirely different machine. So the success you saw at the Xfinity level, the truck level, is not going to transfer or translate right away. So,
and that's fair, and like you said, sometimes it's all about being in that right spot, in the right team, and getting the right
exactly.
equipment in place. I mean, the skill level between the 43 drivers, there's not much difference in skill, in my opinion. There's subtle changes, subtle things that are different, subtle specialties that each driver brings to the table. But the overall skill level, if you have a car that's really rocking, I'm pretty sure a good majority of those drivers can take it home as far as on a weekly basis, or have consistently high finishes if they were given each the same type of material. Let's say like a Joey Logano was last year, or even a Kevin Harvick who won so many races last year.
Absolutely. And, let me run through these last few drivers real quick. And I want to get to the aerodynamic changes we're making, because I think that evens the playing field here when we're talking about NASCAR and the parity within the sport. Just real quick, Daniel Hemrick is taking over the number 8 Chevy for Richard Childress Racing. That number is now full-time. It used to be the 31 car. They've switched over to the 8. Big deal here. The 8 hasn't run full-time in many, many seasons. Martin Truex he got ousted from the 78 Toyota because that team shut its doors. He's taken over the 19 Toyota for Joe Gibbs Racing, formerly Suarez's car. Matt DiBenedetto, he's a people's favorite, leaving the 32 Ford and joining the 95 Levine Family Racing Toyota. And that's a manufacturer change for that team as well, which is a huge deal. We'll see them go through some growing pains. And lastly, or actually second to last, Corey LaJoie, 72 Chevy, moved over to the 32 Ford that Matt DiBenedetto left open at Go Fast Racing. And the big one here that we need to touch on, and I think you'll get a kick out of this one, Chad Knaus leaving the 48 team, not going to be the crew chief for Jimmy Johnson any longer. Now he's moving on to the young gun, William Byron, on the 24 team for Hendrick Motorsports.
And this was something that I think you and I both heard during the course of the period last season, where it just started to deteriorate as far as that relationship between Chad Knaus and Jimmy Johnson, and their results did not have what they were looking for last year. And it could be a fresh new start for both. Obviously, it's been great for William Byron because he's sitting on the pole, I believe, when it comes to the Daytona 500
He
race
is.
coming up this Sunday. What do you know? Jimmy Johnson, although when it comes to Daytona 500, as you've seen with the different aerodynamic, changes and whatnot, it's pretty much like the restrictor plates races. They're pretty much a free for all. It's when you get down to the mid level tracks, the short tracks, that's where you see the different skill involved, and that separates to me some of the different types of drivers that you have there. Although you mentioned Matt Matt DiBenedetto, if I can get that name right, always I say
It's
it
a
here
mouthful,
all the
man.
time, and I know it just doesn't roll off the tongue very well. Matt DiBenedetto, Matt Biden. No, this is going to be sound so great in post. Matt DiBenedetto. If you got $5 on him, my friend, that's 10 grand for you if he happens to win and actually gets those, out of those production issues, and actually has something, a season worth for the making.
I
So,
think the
but
man had a career best finish at Daytona last year, and he's if he can just stay out of the big one, he might be in position to have another top 10 or even a career finish,
there you go.
top 5.
2000 to 1, 2000 to 1. But I
Yeah.
digress. You wanted to talk about a lot of the aerodynamic changes that were out there, my friend, including the new Ford Mustang. So tell me your thoughts on all the aerodynamic changes that are going on. Plus, also, which car do you feel might have the biggest advantage?
All right, so let's start with the Ford Mustang, and we'll get to the aero package changes right after that. Ford Mustang being introduced this year in the Cup Series, it's ran for the last 2 years or 3 years in the Xfinity Series, and it's gonna be a beautiful body to see in the Cup Series now. We're leaving the Fusion body, going onto the Mustang, and it's one of those things that the first, I don't know, it might take 5 to 10 races for the teams to figure out what changes they need to make under the body of the car, to the body of the car, to make sure that they're getting the best efficiency as far as aerodynamics goes. So we might not see the early dominance that we saw out of Kevin Harvick last year. However, by mid-season, he might be in peak form again and dominating races. With that said, I would look at the Chevys this year for possible domination. We're seeing it already out of the qualifying. We saw the Hendrick guys all sitting up near the top, and we didn't see it tonight at the first duel. And for those who don't know, qualifying happens at Daytona, and it only sets the front row, number 1 and number 2. And then everything after that, depending on where you qualified, if you're an even number or an odd number, you run a second race. And so all the evens run together, all the odds run together. And depending on how you finish in that second race determines where you start for the Daytona 500. And so looking at the results from the first, from the first duel tonight for the odd racers, Kevin Harvick won. He should be starting number 3. Is that not right, Gerald?
I believe that is correct. Yes, the winners of the duels, they go 3, 4, and then it's I believe after that it's based off of speed, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it speed or is it finishing in the duels?
Oh no,
I'm not sure.
It's finishes. It's finishes.
Yeah,
You're right. Yeah, and then I think the last 5, depending on how many entrants there are, the last usually about last 5, 6 cars, as far as from the duels, as far as combined, they both the last 5 cars do not qualify for the event unless they have a speed. Like let's say somebody blows an engine that was higher up as far as speed is concerned. Some of those do get a chance to go ahead and
Right.
supplant those that are just in it just for that specific race. And obviously NASCAR caters more to individual teams and cars that are going to be there on a full season basis as opposed to ones that are just going to be there on a limited or one singular time like we've
A little
seen
one-off
before.
race.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, there's always a preference in that. And then also based off of last year's performance as well. So I think that
Right.
also carries in.
Yeah,
But
we
yeah,
get
I
into
mean,
some historical performance there to really set the field, I think.
exactly. But when it comes to the Daytona 500, my friend, you all know, as you and I both know, it's all about drafting partners, aerodynamics, who's going to be there at the end, avoiding the accidents, and it's a free for all at the end, and just being at near the top, what, 3, 5 in those closing laps, so you can go ahead and you get that draft and get that push in there. But
I'm not sure about 3 or 5. I just watched the replay of the 2010 Daytona 500 finish where Jamie Mack won. Jamie McMurray, who is not running a full season this year, but he is running the Daytona 500. Dale Jr. started in 10th or 11th place on the restart with 2 to go, finished in 2nd place. So it's not outside the realm of possibility that somebody could come from outside the top 10 and really make a strong finish there at the race.
That's true. That's true. Although when the leaders up front, at the top 2 or 3, they have a tendency to guard and block really, really heavy. It's so hard to get around in those last few laps. That first one, if that front lead pack, as far as I'm concerned, is so hard to catch. It's easy to catch up to them because they're dogfighting, but it's really hard to pass them up because of the fact that the leader has a tendency to block those faster cars and just slow them down as far as the draft is concerned. For most times, anyways, you're right. But you're right. There are those.
And I was going to say, the casual fan might not know that the guy out front it's called a clean air. They've got a perfect, beautiful track to run down, and everybody behind them is fighting the aerodynamic disturbances that are coming off of their car and the cars that are in between them and the leader. So it's once you're in that lead spot, it's hard to get by. It's hard for somebody to get by that leader because you've got dirty air and you've got this guy blocking you in front of you. So it makes the challenges pretty difficult. You've got to wait for these drivers to make some bad mistakes.
Exactly. And the leaders sometimes will go ahead and maybe stick their rear end as far as into the other lane to block that lane and create some dirty air there as well. So that slows that down. So yeah, it's all about, sometimes it's about experience as well when you're leading up front, but you're right. There's a lot going on when it comes to Daytona 500 and for the rest of NASCAR season as well. But one of the things I know you wanted to touch upon is the post-race inspection changes, which you and I both over the years have seen as somewhat laughable. Some, slap on the hand here, slap on the hand there. But pretty much, to me, it has sent the signal over the course of the years that you can pretty much tweak a lot of stuff and it really doesn't get really, I guess, the type of punishment that it deserves. But you said that's changing.
Yeah, and to kind of build off of what you said, in the years past, we've had guys. It's a label that gets put on their win if they're found to fail post race inspection. It's called encumbered, and the NASCAR community has since joked and called it the cucumber of a win. Uh, and it's always funny to hear somebody got cucumbered in the middle of the season. You kind of sit there and you go, "Oh, what does that mean?" But there is going to be no more cucumbering. We are actually going to be taking away wins, and guys will be moving up in the charts depending on how they finish. So say number one, or the guy that finishes first place, fails post-race inspection, which will be occurring within 2 hours of finishing the race on site. It used to be that the cars went back to NASCAR R&D for teardown and inspection. It's actually going to happen at the racetrack this year, which is brilliant. I mean, let's get to the answer sooner if we can, and that's what NASCAR is doing. So wins will be taken away, and guys will be fined, and guys will be suspended. And I don't see us not having something like this happen this year. Somebody will be disqualified, and the results will change, and somebody will get a win, after sitting in second place for almost an entire race. So we'll see how that goes.
And I believe you on that, and I've seen that as well. And I have a feeling that's going to happen because of the fact that you're dealing with millions and millions of dollars advertising, sponsorship. You're dealing with millions of dollars when it comes to race packages, prize winnings, and team obligations and things of that nature. So the temptation to try and tweak the car, the temptation to try and get that little edge out of there, because these cars in reality are so close together on speed, that temptation to just tweak that car, especially when it comes to the top teams that are out there, temptation to tweak that car just a little bit, that might not be in the gray area or might actually be beyond it, is very great. And I expect something of that nature at least once, if not twice, to finally get the message in there to the drivers that, hey, this is not hunky-dory anymore.
Absolutely. It's really putting the responsibility back on the drivers and the crew chiefs to make sure that what they're fielding on race day is compliant with the rules.
And let's hope it stays that way. And let's hope they finally get the message. Like you said, I think it's going to happen once or twice myself. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But for the most part, I think it's going to be a great season. Now, I want to ask you,
Absolutely.
what I want to ask you, hopefully you will be able to come on when you choose to come on and give us updates on the NASCAR season, but not only before the
Oh
playoffs,
yeah.
but also during the season as well. But I think it's going to be a great season, just like you. And I want to go ahead and just break down some of the things. Since I'm here in Vegas, I want to go ahead and talk about some of the odds that are out there as far as who's the favorite and what, so on and so forth. So, Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Martin Truex, Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano, who won last year. Those are some of the top favorites there. Clint Boyer, Eric Jones, Eric Almirola, they're all in the mix as far as in the 25-1 ratio. Denny Hamlin, I think, is a little bit low at 25-1. Kurt Busch at 25-1. Those are a little long odds for me. I think those are names that can still go ahead and provide a quality win or two here and actually be in contention for a championship. But
The
your
only
thoughts, but
oh, I
your
was gonna
thoughts. Oh,
I was gonna say the only thing that concerns me about Hamlin and Kurt Busch is both of them have new crew chiefs and essentially new teams for the year. So this first race might not go as well as they wanted to.
no, but as you and I've seen, all it takes is just a run, maybe during the course of the middle of the
Oh
year,
yeah.
towards the end, maybe July, August, in that range. And you know what? That can change a whole season for you real quick. I mean, Kevin Harvick dominated for a great portion of last year, but unfortunately, it took the wrong time at the wrong place, and just not good enough. Didn't do it enough for him to take home the total prize over the course of the season. And that's how Joey Logano won out, because he was very opportunistic and when he won and at the times he won. So your thoughts on a favorite this year, as far as if you had to go pick one or two, who do you think is going to go ahead and at the end of the day, in what I still believe in Homestead, in a track that I'm not exactly in love with as far as ending the season on? I think it'd probably be better on a more challenging racetrack or a more high speed or exciting racetrack to finish your season on. But all right, I get it. Homestead needs some love.
It does.
Your thoughts on Homesteads when it comes down to it and they finish at Homestead. Your thoughts on who might win the trophy for the entire season from the Monster Energy Cup.
It's this is like trying to predict the Super Bowl in week 3 of the preseason. But I will go
I
ahead
know,
and
but we're here doing it anyways.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and we wouldn't have it any other way, I don't think. But I would say there's two drivers in my mind that I think we need to keep an eye on all season. Kyle Busch, number one. Um, he was there. He was in the mix last season for the playoffs, but I didn't see that top form out of Kyle Busch at times. It was there many times. He won a lot of races last year, but at times it just seemed like he was distracted.
Hit
So
or miss, hit or miss, maybe. Pardon
yeah,
the
hit or
pun.
miss. Yeah. So I would like to see a resurgence out of him this year. He's not my favorite driver, but I'll tell you what, he can drive a car. He's a wheel man. And the other one you really need to be looking at is Kyle Larson. I mean, he struggled a lot of last year. However, I will say I think he's got a little more funding coming this year, which means a better ride at each race, which means we might be seeing Kyle Larson run that top line at a lot of racetracks this year.
And that's good. When you have that top funding, that top level funding, it's all about consistency at a continuous level each and every race, top 3, top 5, no worse than the top 10 each and every time. You're the one that they're always talking about, and not just at a specific race or a specific specialty as far as, okay, he's just a road racer or he's
Yep.
just a short track guy. You want to get into that conversation where you're a threat each and every week and you're saying he's going to get over the hump, and that's good to see as far as for Kyle Larson fans out there.
Oh yeah.
We talked about the favorites, and I'm still thinking Martin Truex Jr. even with the jump to a new team. And I'm sorry for Furniture Row Racing, rest in peace and all that. I'm sorry that there's such a quality team unfortunately could not stay in the business. That's really a shame to see, especially when NASCAR needs it most. Your thoughts on a dark horse as far as it's concerned, or maybe a long shot, because you've got the odds right there from Westgate here in Las Vegas. Your thoughts on maybe some dark horses you think people should keep an eye on, or maybe put some action on as well.
I would say, and this is going to sound crazy, but he finished second at the Daytona 500 last year, Bubba Wallace Jr. I have a feeling he might just be a great plate driver, and it might come down to he might just be a great Daytona driver. He stayed out of it for the most part last year. If he can do the same this year, he's going to put himself in a position to finish the race in the top 5 this year. However, we know that it all comes down to luck, so we'll see if Bubba Wallace is still there. Matt DiBenedetto is another name you start looking at. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. had a little trouble at the plate tracks last year. I wouldn't call him a dark horse, but he's going to be there to shake things up as well.
Okay. All right. I mean, like I said, if you're really a big Matt DiBenedetto fan or a Darrell Wallace Jr. fan, they're 2,000 to 1 odds to win the 2019 Monster Energy Cup. So temptations there. And that's from the Westgate in Las Vegas. So I know sports betting is available around the U.S. now. So if you've got a local bookie down there or a local casino you like to go ahead and do some sports betting on, and those odds can't be much different, it might be time to invest $5 in it. What do you know? You never know. Might come in. For me, I think some dark horses a little bit closer to that, although not much more when it concerns Ryan Newman. He's moving to Roush. I know it might
Ooh, I
be
like
seem
that
like a long
pick.
shot. He's the 301 right now listed at Westgate. He does have the experience. It's all a matter of, I think, him having a team that will go ahead and put him at the forefront each and every race. So it's about consistency. Will he find that consistency like he found at an earlier portion of his career? We'll have to wait and see, but he is very tempting at a 301 shot right now. And then last but not least, how can I say no? How can I avoid this one? At 30 to 1, Jimmy Johnson. Yeah, I know Chad Knaus is no longer there, but maybe the change is good in this case, and maybe it'll work out best to give him a new shot of adrenaline. Because I think if that doesn't do it, maybe it's time for Jimmy Johnson to go the way of what most of the NASCAR veterans do around his age and whatnot. Maybe do some part-time stuff, maybe just specialty type racing or whatnot. Because if it doesn't work out for him this year with a new outlook on a new team, as far as he's still with Hendrick Racing, but with Chad Knaus gone, And if this shot of adrenaline does not work out for him, then I don't know what will. But he's 30-1. Those are some pretty good long odds. So if you got $5 on that, you never know. You never know.
Yeah, and old man Jimmy, you can't write him off. It's one of those things. He's got all the talent in the world. He's been there before. He's been there 7 times before. Let's be honest. And it's one of those names that you don't want to look over. So
No, no, absolutely. I know he doesn't have the sponsorship that he once did because I believe what Lowe's is unfortunately parted ways with him, or he's still with Lowe's.
Lowe's has parted ways with him. He has found a new sponsor in Ally Financial, which I think Ally picked up the entire season. So he's got sponsorship. We don't know what the financials look like for that sponsorship, but it's hopefully it's up there, and the funding for the car will be right where it was.
And like I said, it's now or never for him. I think it's if this year he will remain a top contender for the next 2, 3, 4 years, or this year will finally be it because you can't say it's because their race team is stale because they've made the changes. So now it's all up to him to go ahead and make those changes and be consistent like he once was, and obviously get back to that championship level. And 30-1, you never know. You never know.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
He
So
he won the Clash on Saturday night or Sunday night, whenever that was.
well, there you go. There you go. That's a great start. Could mean some great things for people out there, especially if they want to go ahead and look at those odds. Again, those are the odds provided by the Westgate here in Las Vegas. Check your local listings wherever you're at. It's in, if you go ahead and have legalized sports betting in your area. Any last thoughts, my friend? You've just been so tremendous as you were, like I said, last year. I'd like to get you on more this year. But that's all up to you. I hope you will take the time to do so. But before we head on out, I'd love to hear some final thoughts on the 2019 season here at the Monster Energy Cup, known as NASCAR.
Well, I am very happy to say that the Pop Culture Cosmos family will be delighted to see me back, or maybe they won't be delighted to see me back. We'll see how it goes. But I will be back to give you guys updates throughout the season. And the last things I want to tell you guys about is there was a big aero package change for NASCAR this year. Aerodynamically, they've integrated a taller spoiler on the back end of the cars. It's gone from 2.5 inches to 8 inches. That's going to create a whole bunch more downforce. Longer front splitter went from about 1/4 of an inch over to about 2 inches longer. Again, more downforce out of that one. And we're getting rid of restrictor plates, which that sounds like, oh my gosh, we're approaching the inevitable here, but we're not really. We're introducing, it's called a tapered spacer. So for those who don't know what a restrictor plate is, it limits the amount of air that comes into the engine. And it used to be, it's a single plate about a centimeter thick, and it's just got regular holes in it. The tapered spacer is about an inch and a half thick, and it's got conical holes in it so that the air isn't just hitting that plate and being disturbed. It's kind of being funneled through the plate and into the engine. So you'll see the horsepower reduction at the plate tracks with that tapered spacer from about 900 horsepower down to about 750. The Daytona 500 will be run with the original restrictor plates, not the original, but the restrictor plates that are tried and true. And but everything after that will be moving to the tapered spacer. So
it's just going to be restrictor plate. It's just going to be restrictor plate racing of a different kind. I mean,
absolutely.
at these super speedways, they're designed. Yes, I understand the safety issues and the big crashes, but then again, you know what? To the general fans out there, that's what they come for. They come to see the high speeds. They come to see the cars closely knit together at speeds upwards of 200 miles per hour and beyond. And they love the threat of a crash at almost each and every turn. And that's what brings them in. That's why the super speedway races are the most watched and the highest viewed. And so it's just human nature, and if people don't like that, I understand. For a long time, drivers do not particularly love the restrictor plate racing, as far as the concept of being within close proximity of 40 different cars within a period of 200 laps for 200 miles an hour. So yeah, I understand that part. Driving it is extremely nerve wracking, but for a fan, it's truly awesome and a spectacle to see. So if they get a restrictor plate racing, they're going to still figure out a way to help control these cars to keep them somewhat evenly matched.
Exactly, and that's what all the aero changes are doing for us here is, adding the tapered spacer, changing the spoiler, and moving some of the duct work under the cars. We're going to see better racing. It's going to be a little easier to drive on the mile and a half tracks throughout the year. However, and we'll see a better racing product. We've seen a few drivers come out and say that these cars are getting a little bit too easy to drive. But I don't buy that argument always. So we'll see how things
Get
shake
them in a
out.
chain of 43 cars and let's see if their perspective changes.
Exactly. So Sunday will be the tell-all for everything, and I tell you what, 2 weeks from now we'll really see what's going on with when we get to Atlanta.
If people ever want to go ahead and see non-competitive racing, even though I do still like it, especially on the streets of Monaco, tell them to watch Formula One racing for a little while and see how that is when you've got two
Absolutely.
passes. You got two passes if you're lucky in a race. So sometimes, so I will say this: it is the exoticness of Formula One racing. That part I love. I love the allure of it and all that. But yes, the actual racing part of it sometimes leaves something to be desired. And I think that's why they want to keep NASCAR as competitive as it is, where there's at least on any given race 10 to 15 different vehicles that can win the race as feasibly. And on the restrictor plate racing, you've still got a chance to have upwards of 30 cars that can actually go ahead and get it done depending on the right type of circumstances. So I think that still is what appeals to NASCAR when people just tell you, oh, they just turn left, turn left. They do a lot more than that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So
Marcus, it's just been awesome again having you here. I'm just so excited for the NASCAR season, like you are. The Monster Energy NASCAR Cup season on its way, starting with Daytona this weekend. And again, you know what? I'm so happy the fact that I'm hopeful that you will come on anytime you choose to give us reports of what's going on in the NASCAR season. Because you know what? The more time I spend with you and all the other guests, the less time I have to spend with Josh on the show.
of course, I will be back for you guys, Gerald.
Sounds awesome. Sounds awesome indeed. And once again, it's so great to have you a part of the
Thank you very
pop.
much for having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you as always. Thank you as always, and being part of the pop culture cosmos.
Whoop, whoop.